Welcome back to the Content Matters podcast. I am here today with Brian Piper. Brian is the Director of Content Strategy and Assessment at the University of Rochester. He's also an author. He has co-authored the upcoming second edition of the Epic Content Marketing book with Joe Pulizzi, which I'm excited to talk with Brian about that. He's also a speaker. Most recently, he was at CM World, and he's a Web3 enthusiast. We're definitely going to get into that topic. Brian has, he's got such a wealth of knowledge and experience across a wide range of content marketing and content strategy topics. So I'm really happy that you agreed to join us today, Brian. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
It's funny, when I was doing my kind of my topic things that I wanted to do, I just had this urge of this kind of rapid fire conversation that is like, because there were so many things that we could talk about that you know about. So I don't want to do that. I want to try to get into some of them really well, more deeply than others. But yeah, you just have such a wide range of knowledge. So I think we're going to have a really good conversation.
Thank you. I agree.
Cool. So let's start with my first question. You were a web developer, but now you are in content marketing. And you said that the book, the original book that Joe Pulizzi wrote, Epic Content Marketing, was the reason you got into that. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was a web developer just as a job to pay the bills. I didn't really love it. I wasn't passionate about it, and I wasn't particularly talented at it. I worked with some really good developers who kind of knew where my strengths laid, and they weren't in the coding part of the web development. So they would oftentimes just say, well, why don't you do this web positioning and the content optimization and massage the writing in there so it'll rank on the search engines. So that's where I kind of got started with SEO. And then when I read Epic Content Marketing, I was floored by the idea that you could sell things by telling stories and setting yourself up as, or your brand up as, the expert in a particular area. So as soon as I saw that and kind of reimagined myself as a marketer, as a storyteller, I went right down to the vice president of marketing at the company I was working at and told her that she should hire me as her digital marketing manager. And she took a chance, and she did. And I've been loving my career and my job ever since.
I think web development is a great career for a lot of people. I did it a little bit when I first started out, but definitely think that this is where all the really exciting stuff happens, at least in my mind anyway now. So I was happy when I made the switch over. So yeah, I think you're dead on. There's so much stuff going on in content and marketing right now that just to be involved in it is just really awesome.
Yeah, it's very exciting. But I think having that developer background and understanding what goes on behind the scenes can come in very handy as
Yeah.
well, and lets you communicate with the developers in a much more understandable way for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's extremely important. So tell me how you got involved in the book with Joe, writing the second edition.
So once I got my job at the University of Rochester about 5 years ago, one of the first things I asked for was for them to send me to Content Marketing World, which was Joe's conference. He and Robert Rose started Content Marketing Institute. They put on this big conference every year. I knew it was kind of the epicenter of content marketing, so I had always wanted to go. So in 2017, I went for the first time, and I went every year since then. And every year I would track down Joe and take a selfie with him and thank him for writing Epic Content Marketing and tell him how it changed my career path. And then after, the first year that I went, I saw amazing presenters up on stage, Joe and Andy Crestodina and Chris Penn and Jay Acunzo. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to present. I want to be able to share information with all these people at the same time. So then a few years ago, I started presenting at industry conferences. I started doing workshops. And 2 years ago, I got accepted to present at Content Marketing World, which was fantastic. I was very excited about it. And then, of course, COVID. So I presented virtually that year, which was still great. But then last year I presented in person, and it was a much smaller conference. It's usually around 4,000 attendees. Last year, there were only 800 people there. So I got to spend a lot of time with the other speakers and with the other presenters. And I spent a lot of time with Joe and created a friendship with him. And I think he finally remembered who I was after all those years of selfies. And then a couple weeks after the conference, we were in a Slack chat room that was a book club discussion. And Joe was in there talking about his last book, Content Inc., that he had just done a second edition of. And so in the chat, I was asking him questions and I asked him, I said, when are you going to do a second edition of Epic Content Marketing? Because you know what an impact it had and it definitely needs to be updated. It still has Google Plus examples in there.
Yeah.
And so he wrote back kind of jokingly and he said, well, if you co-author it with me, I'll do it. And I kind of laughed. And then the next day, after thinking about it all night long, the next day I emailed him and I said, if you are serious about this, I will absolutely do this with you. And he said yes. And so it's been a fantastic experience working with him and learning with him and sharing knowledge back and forth and really figuring out how to turn the second edition into a very useful piece of knowledge and a resource for content marketers and content entrepreneurs.
What kind of new things are in it other than taking out the Google Plus kind of stuff that doesn't exist anymore?
So when we first started looking at how we were going to update it, we thought, well, we'll just put in new case studies and change the statistics to update those. And we started going through, and there were a lot of different changes and a lot of things that needed to kind of come out of the previous edition. So then we're like, well, maybe we just throw it all away and start over brand new. But once we did that, then looking at the structure of it, we realized, well, this is all still really valuable. The content in there and the ideas in there still apply every bit as much now as they did 10 years ago when it was published. So we really kind of whittled down the first edition down to about 2/3 of the overall content of the second edition. And then we updated all of the case studies and the examples and the statistics in that section. But then we added on a whole another third, which is all about changes in technology. So we talk about AI and machine learning. We talk about Web3. We go into depth and we have several chapters on Web3. And then we also talk a lot about community and super fans and then the future of content marketing. So it was fascinating getting to work with Joe and talk through all of those content areas and the new ideas that have sprung up in the last 10 years.
I didn't realize the book was 10 years old. My God, I remember getting it when it came out and reading it. I didn't think it was that old. Wow. And stuff's sure changed since it first came out too. Like strategies and stuff were kind of similar, but the technologies and stuff are really different. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to getting it.
yeah, it was a lot of fun to write, and it's available for pre-order now, and it'll be coming out February 14th of next year. So if you're looking for a Valentine's Day present, I already told my wife that that's what she can expect. She wasn't very happy about that, but probably get something else as well.
Yeah. I always tell my husband books I want for Christmas, and he's like, yeah, right. It's not gonna drives him crazy. Anyway, all right. So you presented at CM World this year, and you were talking about data to optimize your website and for search engines and for people. Like, is that's obviously something that companies are struggling with, that they're trying to appease both the machine and the human at the same time. Like, what do they need to do? Like, what are they not doing well? What do they need to think more about?
Yeah, so I do a lot of consulting as work as well, especially with higher ed organizations. And it's amazing when you go into a new organization or a new company that hasn't done a lot of intentional content marketing or intentional content optimization, because everybody wants to make better content and make it perform better. But when you really start looking at the data, that's when you start getting insights into what you can change and what you can alter within their workflow or within their existing content to cause massive improvement in performance and in reach with your different audiences. So that's one of the things that I see as most companies that I work with when I go in. It's just that they're not looking at the overall picture of the data and the content performance. And you can oftentimes find kind of low-hanging fruit for ways to improve their organic traffic is one of the, easiest things to attack first, because they have all this content that exists on the website, but they're not really monitoring why it's performing well or why it's not performing well. And when you can start digging into that and really starting to show, well, here's a piece of content that you have that is reaching this audience. Let's make sure that it's aligned with your strategies, that it has a call to action, that it's using the right keywords and focusing on delivering the right message that aligns with your strategy. So it's kind of looking at that whole picture and trying to tie it all together that I find is most helpful in organizations that I work with.
I think I worked with a company that had an agency, an SEO agency that was just really struck on use the keyword, use the key phrase, and not really thinking about what else goes into, really creating the right type of content and tracking it. So, and it boggles me that we can't get past that we can't think more broadly and when we do this kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with the data then, Google Analytics 4 is here. Well, it's here, but it's not. And it's everybody has to change. And everybody I've talked to is like, yeah, okay, we will. But it seems to me that it's going to be a pretty big change for people. But there's still no rush. Like, even though Google has said that come, I think it's July of next year, that we won't be tracking if you don't start using it. So what do you think people need to do to kind of get ready for it?
Yeah, and I'm doing a lot of updates and a lot of consulting, helping people update to the new platform. And what I tell everyone is the most important thing right now is to just create the new property. So you
Mhm.
make sure you're collecting the data, because when July 1st happens and you want to look back at your previous year of data to see how your content has been performing, you're already past that point. You're already not going to have a year of data. So at least set it up. And then what I do is I tell people every week, just spend half an hour or an hour, just go in and play around with the tool. There's some incredible tutorials out there. There's some great walkthroughs that explain the differences between Universal Analytics and Google Analytics 4 and how it works differently. And if you just go in and take it piecemeal and don't try to bite the whole thing off at one time, because it's like learning any, very exhaustive tool. There's a lot of different things that you can use, a lot of reports that you can create and things that you can build. Just take one piece at a time every week, or find a new tutorial that you can watch every week and just slowly and gradually educate yourself. And then by the time July 1st comes around, you're not going to be scrambling to try to figure out how to migrate all of your dashboards over to GA4, or how do I find this report that I need to, you know, communicate to leadership on how our performance is doing. And you're going to start, I've run a lot of dashboards side by side in Universal Analytics and then Google Analytics 4. And when you look at the metrics side by side, they are different, and it tracks things differently and reports things differently. So understanding that and being able to explain that to leadership or to your team as to why it's reporting differently and what it means that it's, tracking this in a completely different way than it tracked it before is incredibly helpful information to have.
Yeah. Does that mean that Google's doing things better? They've improved the way they're reporting? I guess that's obviously what it would mean.
Yeah, and it's just much more accurate, because the way that Google Analytics 3 reported and pushed metrics back into the system, it was very dependent on visiting the next page. So if you didn't go to another page on the website, it didn't record your metrics from the last page that you were on.
Hmm.
Whereas GA4, it's all event-based. So every time you have some sort of action on a page, you scroll depth or you click on something, a drop down, it'll know that and it'll report that back. So it's going to start tracking all that better, more consistent, higher quality data.
It seems like maybe you might want an analyst in there working with you for a while to make sure that you really understand what you're looking at and why it's different.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some great resources online of people who are doing an excellent job of explaining how it's different and why your reports are going to show up differently.
Yeah. Can you, so you could start using that now, right? You could just do the switch right now and probably you maybe in some ways you'd be better off because then you're already on the way to where you need to be.
Absolutely. That's what we're doing is we're setting up, we're doing everything in Google Analytics for now. And when we hit a roadblock where we don't know how to generate this same information that we've gotten before, that we've used before, then we do some research. We look around online, we find someone else who's already doing it. There's some great communities out there where you can go in and share your problems, and someone will come back with an answer. So it's just a matter of one by one picking these things off so that next July you're not scrambling to try to take care of everything all at once.
Kind of like the marketers are now with the cookies. Oh my God, cookies are gone.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's just let's step back for one sec because there was one question I wanted to ask you about SEO. Um, I'm not sure if it was in a conversation or where I saw it, but you talked about this idea of reactive and proactive SEO, and I wanted to kind of understand the difference better because obviously there's something important there and how you use that.
Yeah, so reactive SEO is when you are looking at content that you already have, content that already exists or that you've already written, and now you're going back to it, trying to figure out how to optimize that, what keywords it's ranking for, and then how to change the piece to better serve a particular audience so that you can reach your strategic goals. Proactive SEO is now you are looking at trends, you're looking at what content people are searching for, what content is getting a lot of traffic, and you're trying to figure out what aligns strategically with your initiatives so that then you create that content. You intentionally go out and answer questions that people have about these high traffic pieces of content. At the university, we recently did this with some Ukraine stories. We knew we had some history professors who were very well versed on the conflict that was going on. So as soon as that was, you know, featured in the news every day, we knew that that was a high volume area. So we went out and we did a bunch of research around keyword phrases and questions people were asking. And then we went to our experts and we asked them those specific questions so that we were able to provide that information, package it up in several different pieces of content that all link to each other. Google loves to have these pillar pages with a lot of supporting content pages around them. It really helps you build your, your EAT algorithm, the expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, which Google likes to rank content higher for those. And we drove a lot of traffic because we were being very intentional, very proactive, very forward thinking with our SEO.
I think I definitely like that approach better, kind of being on the forefront and making sure you're thinking of things clearly and more before you start doing. But I don't know that a lot of some companies do it when they do their content marketing strategy and they think about their topics and stuff, but they don't always go really deep into, what are the things I specifically want to make sure I mention in my topic, in my pieces that I'm creating and things like that.
Absolutely. And being
Yeah.
able to, and just having that awareness of what the audience is looking for and what the public is looking for, what information they're seeking. If you can provide that from a reliable source. Yeah, I mean, we drove a lot more traffic with that piece than we do with almost any of the pieces that we go back and optimize after the fact, after they've already been up.
Yeah. Um, is it different? Like you work in a university. I guess it's not really different how you create a content strategy or content marketing strategy than you would with a brand. It's just a different industry, technically, right?
Yeah, one of the challenges with higher ed is you have a lot of different audiences and you have a lot of different organizations, schools, departments, all looking at very different goals and KPIs. So our admissions department is really focusing on incoming undergraduate students, whereas Some of our scientific research departments are much more focused on reaching faculty or graduate students, whereas our advancement team is interested in doing fundraisers. So very different audiences, very different goals, and trying to get all those different siloed groups focused on institutional strategies can be challenging sometimes. Just to remind them, keep reminding them, all right, remember we're promoting this as an institution. We have a lot of opportunities to collaborate on projects, to cross promote between departments and teams. So those can be challenges, but those are challenges that you face in big businesses, big brands as well, that
Yeah.
siloed, very segmented. But I think the different audiences is one of the more challenging parts of working in higher ed.
Yeah, I can see that. And then, I mean, there's not just people internally, but people you're trying to reach externally as well, different groups from that perspective too. So yeah, I can see that definitely. Okay, let's talk about the creator economy, because you know a fair amount about that. I've seen you talk about that quite a bit. It's growing really fast, and brands are really trying to kind of get in with them and help kind of push their stories better. What are you seeing in terms of what's working for co-creating and collaborating with creators, brands and creators?
We're seeing a lot more instances where brands are purchasing creators. They're purchasing media companies. They're purchasing audiences and communities. So instead of trying to go out and build their own community, which takes time and effort, and a lot of times they don't have the patience to wait for that to grow organically. So they can go out and buy a newsletter that already has the audience that they're looking for, already has that trust developed with them, and then they can just leverage that. Arrow Electronics did that. They bought 56 different publications and just incorporated them into their company. And they gave them editorial leeway to continue writing the content that they were writing. They just had them all align with their brand and, feature their advertisements and, focus on many of their different products. And they had wild success doing that and bringing all of these audiences into their environment. So I think you're going to see more and more of that, where brands are looking to leverage these communities that exist that are already built from all of these creators. So I think it's a fantastic time to be a creator and be growing an audience and building this network of people who trust you and rely on you and see you as a credible resource.
Yeah. I get a lot of creator newsletters, some really smart people in the content marketing industry, and they always their newsletters are always was sponsored by so and so. And you tend to see a lot, or I have seen in the creators that I follow, the same brands sponsoring multiple newsletters. So I would think that would be really good for them. It's the brand awareness kind of aspect. But yeah, it's smart. And creators, people who are just out there telling their stories and talking about their stuff, there's such an opportunity for them today to kind of really get people to pay attention to them.
Yeah,
including brands.
Yep, definitely. And that's one of the things we talk about in the book is, Joe says it in Content Inc. He's like, you need to have an exit plan, because at some point you will exit your business. So if you're a creator and you're building this brand and building this business, focus on how you are going to sell that eventually and get a profit from all that work that you've put in to build this community and build this network. So if you're thinking about sponsorship opportunities along the way, I mean, every person who may sponsor your newsletter is someone who may eventually be interested in buying your community. So tons of opportunities there and things to think about from the minute that you start creating content.
I never thought about that they actually not just sponsor you, but someday they might want to acquire you. That's exciting to think about too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Another topic that you know a lot about is Web3. I I started reading one of your articles today online, and my brain started going, ooh, okay. There's a lot here to understand. You even have your own coin, Piper, which I went to try to find on Rally and quickly realized you're not on rally.io, you're somewhere else, which sounds like it's probably the smarter way to go from what I've been hearing about Rally. So let's lay the foundation first. Tell me or explain to us, what is Web3 and how does it impact brands?
So I give a lot of presentations on the fundamentals of Web3 and trying to explain the opportunities behind Web3. And it's a very polarizing topic. A lot of people immediately dismiss it as overpriced JPEGs and fake money, and it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And then when I start getting into the use cases, I'm like, the technology that drives Web3, which is the blockchain technology, is here to stay. And it's creating tactics and opportunities for us that have never existed before. When I explain it to people, I tell them that Web 1 was kind of a read only. It's when the internet just came out and we all started having access to it, and brands could put websites up with information that we could go consume. And then Web 2 came along, and that's where now we had the read and write ability. So we had content marketing or content management systems that gave us blogging. We had social media. So now, as a user, we had a voice. We had the ability to reply, to engage, to be advocates for brands, or to complain about things when they weren't going our way and put our voice out there and be heard. And so then what Web3 gives us is the opportunity to actually own digital property. So for the first time, we can own a digital asset and prove through the blockchain that we own that asset. And that creates all sorts of new opportunities. So it's created cryptocurrencies, it's created tokens. So now you have these non-fungible tokens, these NFTs that can show that you own a particular asset, that can give you access to certain communities, to specialized opportunities that wouldn't exist if you don't own that asset. And then there are other tokens, social tokens, creator coins that you can use to feed a community and to drive a community and incentivize a community. So now, instead of just coming into a community and looking for information that you can get, now you can actually earn tokens by contributing information. So now you have this co-ownership opportunity where someone comes in, they buy some of your coin, and just by holding the coin, they get access to different areas of your community. And then if they contribute and they add value, you can reward them with more coins, and then they can exchange those for services. And then if they decide later down the road that they don't want to be in your community anymore, they can sell their coins, and they may sell for a profit. If your community has grown and expanded, they may sell for a loss if your community has gone down, but they're still going to be able to get value back out of that asset that they had, as opposed to like a membership site where you go in and every month you pay your $30 or whatever, and you expect $30 of value out of that.
Mhm.
And, if your credit card expires or something happens and you don't make a payment, then you have to chase them down and say, do you still want to be in our membership? Whereas in Web3, you just have to hold those coins in your digital wallet and you get all the access to the communities. And then when you're done, you just sell those and take them out of your wallet. But, so it gives us tokens. It also gives us DAOs, which are decentralized autonomous organizations. So these are like smaller blockchain based companies that can form very quickly around a particular idea or a particular goal that everyone in the community has. The Constitution DAO was a great example of this, where you had thousands of people around the world come together within a week's time and raise, I think, $17 million, $21 million, something like that, to try to buy a copy of the US Constitution that was going up for auction.
I
And
remember that. Yeah.
yeah, they didn't end up winning, but the fact that all these people could get together around one central goal and one centralized theme and raise that much money that quickly was really eye-opening to a lot of people. And there are a lot more businesses that are being created this way. And I belong to a few of those.
Yeah, definitely. I do too. So, okay, tell me about Piper Coin then, because you have some really interesting ways that you use your coin.
Yeah, so basically my coin powers Piper's Place, which is a community where creators can come together and talk about ways to optimize their content, to make their content perform better, to look for opportunities for content marketing within the Web3 landscape. And I do coaching in there. So if you hold a certain amount of coin, you get access to me for an hour every week where we just do open coaching. If you have a content question or are looking to get some SEO done for your website, you can come in and I'll run reports for you and I'll send you content that'll help you. And then if you hold more coin, then I can actually do that on a monthly basis for you. So I'll look at your analytics, I'll create dashboards for you, I'll help you monitor and optimize your content on an ongoing basis. And then I also have the opportunity, whereas you earn coin just for being in my community and participating, you can then spend some of those coins by having me, run a particular type of audit for your site or write a blog post that's targeted on particular keywords for your site, look for backlink opportunities for you. So it's just a great way to work together. And as I've grown my community, I've met some great people who have created all sorts of new opportunities for me. So I've gotten podcast episodes, I've done presentations to different industries, all from the people that I interact with within my community.
And the community is that like on Discord? Is that how that, does it have to be Discord? Because I really don't like Discord.
A lot of people really don't like Discord. And so it doesn't have to be on Discord. There are people who do Web3 communities on Circle, or there are some native Web3 applications that are working on building a better environment. But Discord right now is one of the ones that works the easiest with crypto. So it's easy for me within my Discord community to reward my community members who engage with coin or to do regular drops of new, collaborative projects or things like that. So Discord is not the ideal environment, but it's the best that we have right now until someone comes up with something else.
Yeah, my son walked in my room the other day and he goes, "You have Discord?" Like he's 14. That's all the gamers. It's a gamers app. But
Yes,
yeah,
all of my kids love Discord and are on it and have no problems with it. Yeah, they're like, yeah, that's how it works. Sometimes it can be so frustrating to find things, but there's different tricks. And I've actually got someone in my community who's fantastic with Discord. So whenever I have a question, I'm like, how do I find this? And he tells me right away. He's like, well, here's how you do the search and here's where you go. And I'm like, okay, that makes it much easier.
to meet him. Yeah. So is Web3 different? Like, is there a different impact for higher education?
Yes. So the one of the DAOs that I belong to is the Ed3 DAO, and their entire goal is to educate educators on Web3 technologies so that then eventually we can use Web3 technologies to change the way that education occurs and to democratize education. So one of the examples I give is at the University of Rochester, we have 6,000 undergraduate students who are all paying every year a significant amount of money to come to our school and to get a degree and to get a good education. So what if we could change the dynamic of that, and instead of providing education for 6,000 students, we could provide education opportunities for 6 million students at a much lower cost. And maybe they don't get a degree from the university, but they could get NFTs that would be sent to their digital wallets whenever they completed a course or completed a particular area of study. And then they could use that as a digital resume to get remote jobs. I mean, because one thing that COVID has taught us is that we can learn remotely, we can work remotely. We shouldn't be constrained by these geographic boundaries and these physical necessities to be in a particular place that we have always kind of conformed to. So it really opens up learning to a global audience if we can figure out a way to deliver courses and to deliver credentials in a way that can be verified and validated. And the blockchain is the perfect solution for all of that. And then if you start talking about opportunities for metaverse education, there are companies already that are doing where you can go and do lab experiments that actually simulate the physics and the chemistry that's involved in these real lab environments. So you can have chemists from around the world all coming into one virtual research lab and collaborating together and working on experiments at the same time in a way that you wouldn't be able to have in a traditional research setting.
I think our kids that are growing up have so many cool opportunities in front of them. That kind of stuff just sounds wild, but would be, I think my daughter would love that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
when I try to explain NFTs or Web3 to my kids, they just get it. They're like, oh, yeah, it's like a skin in a game. I'm like, oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is,
So
isn't it?
yeah, I love having those conversations with them because they open my eyes up to different ways of seeing it and different ways of comparing it to things that people are used to.
Yeah. So what about brands then? How does it affect content marketing for brands?
Oh, I think it's interesting because it still comes down to the fundamentals. You have to have a strategy, you have to have your goals, you have to make sure you're in alignment. But I think the opportunities to create really strong communities in Web3 are much more helpful and relevant than they were in Web 2. I think Web 3 provides new tactics and new capabilities that we just didn't have before in Web 2. I think the ability for users to own and control their own data is going to be a game changer. I don't think it's any coincidence that Salesforce, which is one of the largest CRM software companies in the world, they launched the NFT cloud platform. So now they are working with big brands to come up with these NFT projects so they can now give people these assets that can help them personalize the experiences that they're going to have when they come to their website. So I think brands are just starting to really play in this space. You see some brands jumping on board and doing a lot in the space. Some brands are just testing it out. Starbucks just announced their loyalty programs, all going to be NFTs. Disney is getting into NFTs and Web3. Google just announced Web3 cloud platform for developers. So we're seeing more and more big players come into this space. We're going to see more revenue. We're seeing more developers coming into the Web3 space. So it's definitely here. It's definitely changing the ideas that we have. And I think it's going to give brands the opportunity to really think about what their goals are and what their impact is that they want to have in the world. And they're going to have the opportunities to create communities focused on that.
Do you think that every brand pretty well has to get this on their radar and start thinking about it?
I think brands that aren't starting to at least educate themselves about this now are going to be playing catch up later. I think it's a matter of time. I'd say 3 to 5 years before all brands are going to start needing to think about how to leverage digital identities, digital wallets. We're not going to call them digital wallets. We're not going to call them NFTs. It's going to be loyalty programs. It's going to be online IDs or something like that.
Yeah.
So we're going to get rid of those terms that people are opposed to, and we're going to get into using terms that people are used to using. But I think that the technology is definitely driving in that direction.
Okay. All right. Last question for you. And that one kind of plays into it. If you could predict where marketing would focus its efforts in 2023 and maybe even the year after that, where would you say they're going to have to focus?
I think one of the biggest issues that we face as a society is trust. We've seen this with the Edelman Trust Barometer came out, and trust is at an all-time low. I think brands really have an opportunity, and content entrepreneurs have an opportunity to build that trust. And I think content marketing is the best way to do that, to establish yourself as a trusted source, as an expert, as someone who your audience can rely on. Once they start seeing that, then they're gonna slowly start coming into your community and engaging more, and they can become advocates for you, and they can go out and share your message and promote and, raise the volume of all your content that's going out there. And I think Web3 is gonna start empowering that even more, and I think people are gonna have to start paying attention and just start educating themselves and look at what other brands, look at what other players in the space are doing with these technologies, and start trying to figure out how you could bring that into your own environment.
So much to think about, so much exciting stuff. I lied. I have one more question for you. You have a ton of books on the back of in behind you on your shelf. What's the one that you would say you have enjoyed the most or learned the most from?
Well, epic content marketing is it's my go-to. It changed my career path when I first read it, and the involvement in writing it has changed my life. It's created all sorts of relationships and friendships and work opportunities and collaboration opportunities that I never would have had before. So if there's one book that's had the biggest impact on my life, I would have to go with that one.
Good enough. We're both part of the Tilt community, and that's, I think, where I first saw your name. So I was very happy to be a part of that community and find you. And I'm going to continue to learn from you as all the time. I look forward to it.
Well, thanks so much
Yeah.
for having me on, Barb. This was a great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next month.